Welcome to the Fit as Mama Bear podcast. I'm Shelby, a certified strength coach, nutrition coach, mama to two, and all-around health nut. This show is about a little bit of everything healthy, fit, and natural related. So if you're striving to smash goals, eat better, feel better, and enjoy the occasional mom rant, this is the place for you. You're listening into episode 11 today, where I'm chatting with Dr. Orlena, a pediatric doctor turned weight and health coach and host of the Fit and Fabulous podcast. She helps ambitious mothers lose weight by eating healthy foods, and today she's sharing with us one of the best ways to manage insulin as it relates to fat loss. Welcome to today's episode. I'm laughing a little bit already that I chose to post a podcast on fat loss with all the mini chocolate bars circulating around today, but here we are. On the podcast with me today is Dr. Orlena, once a pediatric doctor turned weight loss coach. She specializes in helping mamas lose weight. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. So before we delve into all of the fun, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of how you came to coach mamas?
Yeah, okay. So, I'm from the UK and I used to work as a pediatric doctor. And then I had this idea that I wanted to live abroad, and we decided to live in Spain. And I kind of did the whole eyes wide shut thing, moved to Spain expecting to work as a pediatric doctor, and that didn't quite work out. So I turned to the internet, and initially I was helping people with picky eaters and how to teach kids to eat healthily. And then I kind of had an epiphany. Well, two. Firstly, that I was, my kids were growing up and I was getting out of the picky eating stage. And secondly, that the best way to teach your kids healthy eating is for you to demonstrate healthy eating. And that's when I really pivoted and started thinking about how to help mothers, feed themselves and weight loss, but also those are the people who want to feed children healthily too.
I love that. That's one of my biggest, eye twitches is the best word, is just that a lot of moms who come to me want their kids to eat their broccoli and eat their vegetables, but then moms themselves don't eat those things. So it's kind of hard to expect kids to do something that you're not showing them you do too. So I'm a big fan. Obviously, my girls are in the kitchen with me all of the time. And I find they're not as picky simply because we just all eat the same thing. There's not two meals made. I don't eat something different for breakfast. We all eat the same thing.
So that's a fabulous thing. Just on a side note for picky eating is one of those things that means different things to so many people.
Yeah.
And it's a big spectrum of my child doesn't like tomatoes, they're picky. Or, I had two children and they were really genuinely very picky, and it goes along with being very anxious child, and a lot of it is really about this anxiety that they have in their head, but you can see that they're really traumatized about what you have given them to eat. So picky eating is a big spectrum, and I know it's not the topic of today's conversation.
I know, now we're getting excited. But it is a good topic. And you know what, one thing to remember too with moms is we don't like everything either, so we can't expect kids to like absolutely everything.
Yes, that's very true.
We all have our flavor preference too, right? So I guess back on topic here, with the holidays coming up, I did want to touch on fat loss and the best practice you can kind of use to manage it. So however, I also want people to understand that there's normally more going on in your body than just calories in and calories out, which is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm sure you've all heard of the hormone insulin. Most likely you're thinking of diabetes right now, and that's the cornerstone hormone relating to diabetes, but it's also so much more. So in short, insulin is one of the main hormones that helps dictate fat storage, which means that if your goals are weight-based, learning the best way to manage it is crucial. So even from a non-fat loss perspective, you do want to be able to control your insulin levels to be able to thrive energy-wise, but I think this is probably where I'm going to turn it over to you. So why don't we start with the basics and give everyone kind of an overview of what is insulin and what is it at its most basic level?
Okay, so insulin is a hormone, and it's a very useful hormone. And people who have diabetes, you're right, there's two types of diabetes. People who have what we call type 1 diabetes are people who have diabetes from childhood, and they cannot make insulin. Now, before we could give people insulin, before we discovered how to do that, those people died of malnutrition. They just couldn't metabolize carbohydrates. Unless they were fortunate enough to realize that they could eat other things other than carbohydrates, i.e. fats and proteins, sadly, people who didn't have insulin died. So I guess the next question is, what are carbohydrates? And carbohydrates, we all know what carbs are. We're thinking pasta, we're thinking bread, we're thinking
Everything yummy.
yeah, we're thinking yummy. They are yummy. And I think it's interesting that part of the human condition is to seek out carbohydrates because they give us this sugar rush. And so you can either get a long chain carbohydrate, which we call normally a starch, or you can have sugars. So, thinking about table sugar, which is sucrose, or glucose. We've all heard of glucose. And what happens is we eat our carbohydrates and that pushes our sugar levels up. And sugar levels, glucose levels in our body is actually really very toxic. We don't want really, really high levels of glucose. And if you look at people who have diabetes, they get all kinds of problems. And diabetes is this problem with being able to metabolize glucose properly. So they have very high levels of glucose. And that leads to all kinds of problems like blindness and problems with their livers, problems with their kidneys and their
limbs.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to say limbs. So, we don't want these high sugar levels. So what happens is our pancreas secretes this hormone called insulin. And what insulin does is basically takes those high sugar levels in our blood and puts it where we want to use it, which is our muscles and our cells. And so we want to use insulin, and that's fabulous. And how this system should work is that we eat something and then we start metabolizing it, and then we go off and do something, we store all that energy, and then we go, okay, so now I need some more energy, and we access that energy. And then, we repeat that. So we eat something, we store energy, we use the energy. We eat, we store, we use. But what happens now, and what we're seeing a lot, is that people are eating far more in the way of carbohydrates than previously, and far more frequently. And what's happening is we're eating, we're storing, we're not getting to that bit.
Using.
We're not using. We're eating again and we're storing again. We're eating again and we're storing again. And that storage, the main player in that is the insulin. And what your insulin is doing is it's storing your glucose, and it's going, we need to store, we need to store, we need to store. And it stores glucose in different areas. So, for example, it can store it in your liver and in your muscles, and then it starts storing it in your fat. So if you've got high levels of insulin, your body's going, let's store fat, let's store fat. And clearly, this is not a great place to be, particularly if you want to lose weight. So we have to do things to get our insulin levels down. And, weight loss is a big, complicated discussion. There's lots of reasons why people get overweight, but insulin is one of the big players. And if you can really get your mind wrapped around this, you can work out how to eat in such a way that your insulin levels aren't always raised.
So how would you best manage insulin for fat loss specifically? Is it eating less carbohydrates or using more energy? Is it a combo of both?
Well, it is a combination of both. I think what you want to do is have a look at where you're starting to think about. And, different people do metabolize insulin in different ways. So it is very, very individual. So, for example, we have another enzyme called amylase, and that helps us to break down things as well. And some people will have different kinds of amylase. So for some people, eating a potato is like eating a potato, but for some people, it's like eating 2 potatoes. And there's nothing you can really do about that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that broke down differently.
Yeah, there's so much genetic different, contributions, and the way our bodies are so complicated and so amazing. I don't think we're grateful enough for our bodies. And I remember when I was at university, we had a teacher who used to say, you might be clever, but you're not as clever as your kidneys.
It's true. My big moment was learning about epigenetics. For some reason, this was mind-blowing to me that we can turn genes on and off.
Yeah.
That's so cool to me.
And we do all of these things without thinking, we're just metabolizing our carbohydrates, we're doing this, we're doing that, whereas we're just not even thinking about it. So it's an absolutely incredible system. And I think that leads to just, you can have a change here and a change here and different changes. And that just means that we process things in different ways. So I think it's really true that some people can eat more carbohydrates than others and not get affected by it. But what's really important to you is you and your journey and how many carbohydrates you can eat.
Which is a lot of trial and error, I found.
It is a lot of trial and error, but I think the best thing to think about is cutting out refined carbohydrates. So if we think about this system that I told you about, so you get your insulin and your insulin goes up. Your insulin will go up quickly, thinking about, what's the mountains near you? The Rockies. Like thinking about a profile that looks like the Rockies, with the Pyrenees near us. Or it will go up smoothly. Now, I don't know Canada, so I don't know where you have rolling hills. But for us in the UK, it's like Devon rolling hills. So you don't want your insulin to go up way, way up. It's going to go up, but you want it to go up gently and not really push above that threshold that we can't see.
So you don't want it to spike. You don't want sudden spikes. Okay.
You don't want, but what you don't want is the glucose spikes. So different things will affect your insulin. So for example, proteins can affect your insulin, but the main thing is glucose. And the way we absorb carbohydrates, so if we have a processed carbohydrate like a sugar or a flour, it's already been processed a lot. And a lot of that work has been done for us. So if you think about how flour is made and you think about a corn of wheat, I don't know, do you have spelt? Do you see spelt, which is...
Yes, we do.
So look at spelt, and that's basically unprocessed flour. And you look at it and it looks very, very different from regular flour, doesn't it? Because, the processing has done that. Now, if we eat spelt, our bodies have got to do all of that. And that glucose, which is contained inside, is going to be released in a much, much slower way. And you're going to have a much smaller insulin spike than if you eat that sugar, that flour. If you eat the flour, it kind of hits your stomach and your sugar levels go way high. And it's the same with things like sugary drinks. Sugary drinks are one of the worst offenders because there's nothing else there. They're just sugar and water.
There's nothing to process, right?
Exactly.
So I think what you're saying is the longer it takes your body to process something, the slower that release, that spike is going to be. Whereas if your body has to do zero work, you're just going to spike and crash.
Yes.
Right?
And for this reason, you hear a lot of people say, cut out sugar and flour. And this is what they're talking about. This is the reason behind why you should cut out sugar and flour. So if you think about, for example, apple juice, and people have this slight misconception that fruit juice is healthy for you. And it sure is not. Well, it is essentially sugar and water. Because if you think about eating an apple, you're eating all the other nutrients and the fiber that goes in there. And your body has to do the work to get the glucose out of that apple or the fructose. And if you have apple juice, somebody else has done all that work for you. And all you're doing is drinking a sugary liquid.
And so what happens in the body when you do have those really, really high spikes and crashes?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. If you just have nothing and eat sugar, and I remember this when I was working in a busy hospital and, we never had time for breaks. And you know what they do in hospitals? Everybody kindly brings in chocolates. And that is very kind. But the problem is you eat those chocolates and it's basically just sugar. Your sugar levels go up and your body thinks, aha, I'm getting ready to process all this food. Unfortunately, the rest of the food doesn't arrive. You've just got the sugar. And what it does is it works so hard that actually your glucose levels go down and you end up actually feeling hungry. Or in my case, I felt super sick and learned that eating chocolates for lunch was not a great idea. And I was always super grateful to people who brought in a huge basket of fruit because it was so much.
At least you had something to nourish you.
Yeah, but it's surprising. Few and far between. It was not very often that people brought in fruit. It was mostly chocolate.
I think here we do a lot of I have a lot of nurse coworkers, and a lot of nurse friends, and it's a donut thing. Everyone's always bringing in donuts, and it just hurts my head.
Yes, okay, so the thing about donuts is that, and again, I think this is another misconception. People think about flour. So you think, okay, donut has got sugar in it, but it's got flour in it. It's a bit like bread. The problem with bread and flour is it gets broken down into sugar. So it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter. And people do think that bread is oh so great and it's fine to eat bread. Well, it's fine to eat bread in moderation, but a lot of bread is going to have the same response. It's going to push your glucose levels up.
And would you say it's better if you're going to eat bread or if you're going to eat something that is somewhat processed that way, would you say it's better to have something with it to help slow to actually give your body something to do? So say you had avocado on your toast, or
Yes,
however
absolutely.
else you want to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is, one of the things that I talk to my clients about, because one of the interesting things is that if you eat dark chocolate, it's actually relatively healthy for you. It's quite low in sugar. I'm not talking about processed sweet chocolate with all the sugar added. I'm talking about, like 70 or 80% cocoa solids.
85 is my favorite.
Yes, exactly.
I have a square of 85 a day and it's delicious.
Yes, it is delicious. But what I recommend people do is have that immediately after dinner rather than have it afterwards, because if you have it afterwards, it still contains sugar, not as much sugar, but it's still going to give you an extra little spike. So thinking about all those peaks, all those rocky mountains
over the day,
a small one, but it's still going to give you an insulin peak. And you
thank God, because I have mine after lunch, so I feel really good now.
Perfect. That's perfect. It doesn't really matter, but you're absolutely right. You want to be eating things together, and so if you've got kids, you want them, if they're allowed to have some candy, the best thing is to have that candy with with a meal, after a meal.
Okay.
Rather than have it as a separate snack, because, well, for two reasons. Partly, it's going to make your children hungry by giving them just sugar by themselves, but partly and crazy, yes. And so, if you are going to have a fruit juice as a treat, if you are, I would say, think about the portion size and think, a small glass. And perhaps we have apple juice with water for a treat. So you've watered it down a bit. But
we have that with pomegranate. My daughter's like quote unquote fancy drinks. So whenever we're having a drink on a weekend, we'll make them one with like a tablespoon of pomegranate juice and water and put a lemon or put more like fruit slices in it. And they're the biggest excitement of life.
We get pomegranates around here, but I've never seen pomegranate juice. So perhaps make some from my pomegranate.
Yep, it actually tastes really, really good, to be honest. So basically the goal from a weight loss perspective and just an energy perspective to me is to keep those spikes to a minimum. So you want to keep stable levels throughout the day. That's the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, you can go, what you don't want to be doing is going above and beyond that threshold. Now, the problem with this threshold is difficult to really see because we don't know. But there are other things that you can do. So, for example, intermittent fasting is another.
I love fasting.
Is another tool in our toolbox. And actually, people think, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to starve myself, and I'm never going to be able to function." And that's not true. And I would say, play around with it and see what happens. And if you give yourself, well, I would recommend that everybody has at least a 12-hour fast overnight. So you finish your dinner and don't eat after dinner, and then, allow your body to go to sleep. If you can make it 14 hours, even better. But I know that with routines, it can be tricky. And sometimes you can just extend that. Now, fasting is a big topic, so I won't go into it. But what you're essentially doing is allowing your body to reduce your insulin levels and, access its own fat, its own energy supplies. It's going to be doing that when you do that.
So I know you have a podcast, I believe, on fasting.
Yes,
and I
do.
know I have one. So I'm going to link to both of those in the show notes for anyone who wants more information about intermittent fasting, because I know it's something we both absolutely love. I've been using fasting for about 8 or 9 years now, and it's amazing. But
you're having a good time.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I have nothing but awesome things to say about it, mainly because I find it just helps your body kind of reset and gets everything in working order, and I love it. I will link to those.
One of the things I would say is if you get carbohydrate cravings, and I notice people seem to have a craving for a particular thing, so it might be pasta or bread or one particular thing. That's often a sign that you are eating more carbohydrates than you should, and your body is really dependent on that sugar rush, because what you're really craving is that sugar rush. Now, there are different ways of doing this, but when I work with my clients, what I tend to recommend is that they reduce the amount of carbohydrates that they're working before they add in intermittent fasting. Because if you add in intermittent fasting right at the beginning and you're having carb cravings, you're going to find it
harder, way harder. That's a really good tip. I hadn't thought about that actually, but it makes sense because I think when I started intermittent fasting, I was already kind of carb cycling. So I eat a little bit more carbs on days I work out, and just a little bit less on days that I don't. And so that would have made a little bit of sense. Neat. That's a really neat fact, actually. So what about foods that help lower insulin? So what kinds of foods help lower your insulin levels?
Okay, they don't exactly help you lower them, but what they do is stop you from having a high one, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And what I'm all about is vegetables. So what we didn't really talk about was carbohydrates and thinking about the different types of carbohydrates. And what you really want to be going for are unrefined carbohydrates, which are commonly called vegetables, essentially. So vegetables and things like whole grains are another source of carbohydrates that are unrefined. But I think this is, I mean, it's partly healthy eating and it's partly weight loss. And I see so many people say cut out sugar and flour, which is true. And I think that is good advice. But I think another big bit of advice that is missing is it's all about the vegetables. And there's so much research that shows that vegetables and fiber are good for us.
They're crucial. They are actually crucial.
Yeah, exactly. On top of that, you need to think about your fat content as well. And, you know, fat is one of those, it's not really controversial in that I think the evidence is quite clear. But, you know, when you talk to different people say different things.
Yeah.
For me, the only real research that we have on good fats is the PREDIMED study on extra virgin olive oil. And I don't know if you've heard of the PREDIMED study.
I haven't, but I'm going to just make a note right now so that we link to it in the show notes.
All about it.
Yay! Oh, send it my way so that way I can link it for everyone.
Yeah. So what they did in the PREDIMED study was they looked at the Mediterranean style diet. And just to clarify what the Mediterranean style diet is, you might think it's lots of pasta and pizza and rice, but fortunately, it's not. It's lots of fruit and vegetables and lots of variety. It's things like nuts and seeds and good quality proteins, not huge amounts of protein. And they had 3 arms of this. And they had some people who had a low fat diet and then 2 arms of the Mediterranean style diet with either nuts or extra virgin olive oil. And the people in the Mediterranean style diet, and they were all overweight people, they actually lost weight and, you know, they had other health benefits too. So fats are another really interesting thing. And we have been told this slightly, can I say lie? It was a total lie. We were given a lot of misinformation about low-fat diets. And actually we're seeing now that fats don't make us fat. And actually extra virgin olive oil has a lot of things that protect us and give us health benefits.
I think I'd love to put that on a shirt, that fats don't make us fat.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone does go low fat in order to lose weight, and that just...
Yes, no. But it's carbohydrates that make us fat because they get metabolized and stored as fat.
Taking a bit of a break here. Are you a coffee addict? Because with 2 kids, I totally am. Actually, I've become kind of a snob when it comes to it. Like everything else in my diet, I strive for health, and that doesn't change when it comes to my coffee addiction, which is why I love 4 Sigmatic coffee blends. These blends are made with mushrooms, which you think would be gross, but is actually delicious. Mushrooms, chaga mushrooms especially, have been said to boost your immune system, slow the aging process, and fight inflammation. So getting them into your diet regularly is a great idea. And what better way than with a morning cup of coffee? 4 Sigmatic has all sorts of coffee blends depending on what your preference is, but I'm a sucker for the coffee with lion's mane because I find it to be such a great morning kickstart. And if I'm craving something before bed or I need a killer sleep, my go-to is the Rishi Elixir. It tastes delicious and it's super calming. So if you want to up your health game, check out 4sigmatic.com and use the coupon code MAMABEAR to save 10% on your first order.
So eating fats is good because the fat itself is good, but also it helps you feel full up. And so what I love having is a big salad for lunch, lots of vegetables, and splurge it with extra virgin olive oil. Now, extra virgin olive oil has a beautiful taste. It's sort of peppery and olivey, but it's also really versatile. You can make it into a salad dressing. You can make it into pesto sauce. You can make it into salsa verde. So it's a really good way to just vary the flavor.
Yeah.
And give you some fat and help you feel full up. It just makes you feel, I don't know, I sometimes feel that if I just eat a few lettuce leaves, I feel a bit like, I haven't really eaten. But if I eat a salad with extra virgin olive oil or whatever fat that you choose you want, you do feel full up and you think, I've had a satisfying meal now.
Yeah. No, I'm the exact same way. I don't think like I love fats. I really do. And I think I could eat nuts and seeds and avocados and olive oil just all the time. But it makes a really big difference from when you're eating plant-based to feel full is all those things I find keep you far more full.
Yes.
So they're a really, really good addition. So let's just go backtrack a little bit and talk about carbohydrates and veggies and specifically which ones you should be eating. So when we're looking at whole grains, does that include things labeled like whole grain bread, or should we just eat the actual grain? So I just want to be really clear about that.
Yeah, okay, so the labeling can be very confusing. When we're talking about whole grains, we're talking about the actual grain, like spelt, not spelt that has then been whizzed up and turned into flour, because it's not really a whole grain anymore.
Perfect.
So yeah, the actual grain. And do you know what? They're so easy to prepare. Another thing I totally love is lentils and legumes as well, which are another, like they're part of vegetables.
Oh, yummy.
Yeah, but super good. And, you know, they contain some plant proteins, but also they contain carbohydrates as well. So they're still giving you those carbohydrates. Like we have this idea that we only get carbohydrates from pasta.
From bread and pasta. I know.
And it's not true. We get it from, basically, I love this quote. There's no such thing as a superfood. All vegetables are superfoods. And that, I think, sums it up.
I was talking to someone about this a little while ago about how superfood is technically a made-up term, like it's a marketing term, because that's true. It's all plant-based vegetables and plant-based products like that have an insane amount of benefits to them. So technically, they all fall under the superfood category.
Yes, exactly. I think they're all superfoods.
Yeah.
And you need to be eating variety. So the other thread that we haven't talked about, well, we've talked about hormones, and there's another big hormone that is cortisol that plays weight loss. And cortisol is the one that we push up when we get stressed and when we don't sleep. So, you know, exercise and mindfulness will help you bring that down.
So that was actually going to be where I was going to lead in. Is I wanted to talk about how your sleep can affect your insulin levels, because a lot of the times we do focus on what we eat, maybe not as much as we should, but people overlook sleep so much when it comes to stress management and when it comes to weight loss. And I wanted to just chat about how sleep can also affect insulin levels, which in turn can affect your weight.
Yes, you're right. And, you know, one of the reasons as well that if we're sleep deprived, there have been studies that show that basically we get up and we eat more. You know, you have that kind of comfort food. And I have noticed that when I have, you know, a sleepless night, I noticed this one time, we have porridge for breakfast, which is, you know, oats. Oh. I think you guys call it oatmeal.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would normally have a bowl of breakfast, and one day I was really tired and I just found myself, I think my daughter handed me her bowl of porridge that she didn't want to eat, and I just kind of ate it and then stopped halfway through going, what am I doing? Why am I eating this?
Mindless.
That mindless, I'm just tired, I'm not really awake, just that comfort thing. But it was really interesting to notice, actually. So yeah, if we don't sleep well, sleep has so many benefits. It's just, and the research behind sleep is super interesting as well. In the last 10 or 15 years, we've really worked out what's going on. I say we, not me at all. Has worked out, you know, a lot of what's going on when we're sleeping and how we're more productive if we sleep, and we're more healthy, and we look, you know, our bodies fix themselves and we're at less risk of, you know, diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, and we're less likely to put on weight, or, you know, it helps us lose weight because of things like our insulin levels and not overeating.
And I think just sleep starts the cycle. So if you don't sleep well and then you're a bit more mindless through the day and you're probably grabbing comfort foods or more processed foods, and then at 3 o'clock you haven't slept and you've just eaten a bunch of crap, so you're tired again, and you reach for a coffee or a donut or again some sort of sugary rush to get you through the rest of your workday. And then it just creates the cycle. It just keeps going from there.
A lot of people as well think, oh, I'm too tired to go and exercise. And I think that's the wrong way round. I think when I'm tired, I go, right, I'm going to go and exercise because it gives me energy. And my husband, when I'm grumpy, he's like, get out of here and go swimming. And he knows that.
Mine says the same thing. Don't worry. Whenever I'm a grump, it's, do you need to go, for me, it's run or lift, but do you need to go do something? Do you need to go exercise?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's really sad when people go, I can't exercise because I'm too tired. And it's exact opposite. When you're tired, go and exercise, and that will give you the energy. And it's a different kind of tired that you feel when you've been exercising. It's this, there's a difference between tired and apathetic and I can't do anything, to tired and energized and I can take on the world.
Yeah.
That's fit and fabulous.
So with exercise, how does it affect your insulin levels?
It does reduce your insulin levels. So you have a less high peak. So that is one thing that will reduce your insulin levels.
Okay. So if we're looking from a fat loss perspective, we want to make sure that we don't consume too many processed carbohydrates to go above our threshold. We want to exercise so that we use the carbohydrates and the energy that we've taken in. And we want to sleep properly so that our body can keep its own cycle to make all of those things work.
Yes, and it's interesting talking about exercise. A lot of people think that exercise is the number one thing they need to do to lose weight, and that is not true.
I love exercise, don't get me wrong, but it really isn't the biggest part of weight loss at all.
Exactly. And I'm not saying I don't recommend people exercise. I recommend everybody do exercise. But if you're looking for weight loss, you need to look to your nutrition. It's like 85% nutrition and 50, well, depends who you read, between 85 and 90%, which translates as 5 to 15% exercise. Now, exercise is a good adjunct to weight loss, so it does help you, but really it's about being fit and feeling fabulous. And, you know, it's about giving your muscles strength and your bones strength and your heart strength. So that's where the fitness comes in. You get all those health benefits.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more on that one. But it's funny because the first place everyone starts is they start exercising to lose weight, which again is great. You're still like, exercise, always exercise. But when it's just not the biggest component of strict weight loss.
Yes, it's fine to start exercising, but the bottom line is you have to be prepared to change your diet. And you don't have to do it in a way that you don't like. I think, you know, it can be easy and fun, and you can find amazing, nutritious, healthy foods.
Yeah.
But if you're eating loads and loads of carbohydrates, and the American diet, they reckon now the typical American diet gets 60% of its calories from carbohydrates, which is super high.
Wow.
So be prepared to reduce that.
That is a lot. I don't know what Canada's up to. I honestly stopped looking. That sounds terrible. At what the recommended guidelines were, because at one point in time we were 6 to 8 servings of carb and 3 servings of dairy, and like it was alarming. I was like, and I quit. So I don't even know our guidelines anymore. But
that's not the guidelines. That's what people eat. So
okay.
What they're eating, they're getting 60% of their calories from carbohydrates.
That's so
and really
high.
That should be much, much lower. And
the issue that comes with that too is a lot of the time those aren't quality carbohydrates. So
yes, exactly.
Right, like they're not nutritionally dense carbs. They can be reduced.
Yes, exactly. And if you replace them with things like vegetables, and I have seen this actually, that you start craving healthy foods. And, you know, if you have carbohydrate craving, which I've said, you know, I think that's often an indication that you're eating too many carbs. But when you change your diet and replace all those carbs for healthy carbs, or those refined carbs for healthy carbs, actually you get to the stage where you think, oh, I want to eat something. What is it? I want a really lovely, tasty salad or vegetables. And you get to the stage where, you know, you're offered carbohydrates and you go, okay, well, I'll try a little bit, but it, you know, actually it isn't giving me that thing that I want.
And I find for me personally, it just never, if I do go that route and that's what I end up choosing, I never feel good after.
Yeah.
Over the years, it's just made it pointless to choose that because I'm not going to feel good. So I'd rather eat something that I enjoy, and then afterwards I'm like, that was amazing. I have some energy,
But I think that's a self-awareness step, isn't it? Is that you're aware that happens. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. What they get is that instant gratification of biting into a custard donut or something, and that feels amazing. And then they don't listen to how they feel, or they don't notice how they feel afterwards, which is not full of energy and not feeling fabulous, which is what you do feel when you fill up on, you know, good, healthy foods.
I think, you're right. I think that took me a long time to change. but I am a lot more intuitive now. But your taste buds do shift. I'd say it probably takes
2 weeks.
how many? Only 2, eh? I was gonna say 3 to 4.
You regenerate your taste buds every couple of weeks. And this is another interesting point about, if you've got kids and you're feeding them packaged foods, because all of those packaged foods are full of sugar and salt and other nasties as well. But the sugar and salt are 2 things. And so if you're trying to get your kids to eat fruit and vegetables and you're feeding them packaged foods, those fruit and vegetables, they pale in comparison. They're like, I cannot taste them. Here's an experiment I did one Easter. So we had chocolate and I had some beautiful strawberries. Bite into a strawberry and just this beautiful flavor bursts in your mouth. And then I had some chocolate because it was Easter and this super, super sweet flavor. And instead of washing out my mouth, I had another strawberry. And this time the strawberry was sour and disgusting. They were the same strawberries. Yep. Because my taste buds have all that sugar, they just can't taste it. So if you reduce the amount of packaged foods you give to your kids, they're actually more likely to eat the fruit and vegetables because they can taste them and because they get used to them and they get into this habit of, oh, can I have an apple? Can I have a pear? Rather than...
Those are my girls. And this sounds so terrible, but one of the things that drives me nuts is we go to the playground and you see all these boxes of Timbits, which are mini donuts here in Canada, sitting on strollers. And all I think about is, how do you expect kids to want broccoli or to want carrots or whatever you choose after having Timbits 20 minutes ago? Like you wouldn't want to, you'd still want more Timbits. So what are you expecting but we expect our kids to want to eat all these vegetables. And the truth is their palates have changed so much from those processed foods that they're not going to.
Yeah. But even above that, not just even the palates, I think children it's normal for them to like sugar. They are sugar-seeking missiles. And
you think so? That's kind of neat.
Yeah, I think that is, that's what we're evolutionary designed, is to go and look for the fruit. But back in the day, it was the fruit that we were looking for, and we didn't have open access to all of these processed foods that we didn't have to work to get. So I think it is perfectly normal for both adults and kids to want to eat vast quantities of sugar. It's just that that's not good for us, and we have to teach ourselves and our kids not to do that.
I like that thought. That's kind of neat. Interesting.
I say that teaching your kids healthy eating is like teaching them to ride a bicycle. It's not something that occurs naturally to people. Kids do naturally like broccoli and healthy foods. And I have 4 kids, and if I were to ask them what they want to eat, they would like cake and biscuits and things like that. Now, they don't eat that, and they do reach for the apples and pears because I've trained them and because they know they're not going to get the sugar and the candy the whole time.
No, it's true though.
But it's training. It's actually training.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's true, is because I eat like that. My girls are just accustomed to eating the exact same way I eat, and we don't eat cookies for breakfast and all of that all the time. So when they normally do ask for something, my daughter's really funny. She's 4. And so my husband and I eat very differently. He eats a very standard diet of crap food. He'll eat what I make him, but outside of what I make him. Whereas my girls, obviously they are around me a lot more, and so they pick up on things I say, but my husband will cut a pepper or something for her, and she'll say, we need something with that to stabilize. We should have some almonds.
Fabulous.
Yeah, so her solution is to always go for almonds or for avocado, or it's hilarious to watch her, and every time my husband's like, really though, like, this is actually happening. Yeah. But it's because that's just how our snacks have been for the last 4 years, is we don't normally have just one thing. We have something with another thing.
Exactly. When she's 18, that's how she's going to be eating. And I think that is truly the goal as parents, is to teach our children healthy eating. It's just a habit when they leave home. What we don't want is them eating really healthily, and then the minute they leave home, they're eating junk food.
Yeah, to get it out of their system because they were so deprived because of it. So I think you're right. It is training. It's just day in, day out reinforcing habits. Like that's just what we grab. Oh, I love that thought. Well, I suppose we should wrap it up before we turn this podcast into how kids can eat healthy. I hope you don't feel like your brain is exploding. It always sounds like a lot of information whenever someone gets into the insulin explanation to me. But the truth is, living a healthy lifestyle overall is what's going to help manage your insulin levels and your fat loss goals. So thank you very much for jumping on to the podcast with me today. It's always fun to pick someone's brain for a little bit. And for anyone who wants to connect with Dr. Orlena, learn more about awesome facts, or how to reach out to her personally, I'm going to link all of her social channels in my show notes. And if you just want to let me know what the main place you want to direct people to if they have questions, that would be awesome. So is that your Facebook page?
I think probably my website, which is Dr. Orlena, DRORLENA.com, and that's where I do all my things.
Perfect. And go check out her podcast because they are fantastic and really fun to listen to on dog walks. That's when I've been listening to, catching up on all of my podcasts. So I think I've had your voice in my ear for the last week. It's been kind of funny as I play catch up, but it's been really hilarious, actually. You have some amazing podcasts. So for anyone who needs something to listen to, head over and check out her podcast. Once again, I can't thank everyone enough for listening into the episode today. We're coming into a fun season, so I hope that we've given you something to chew on. Remember, if you're in need of fitness tips, workouts, and amazingly healthy recipes, to check out my website at www.fitasmamabear.com. And if you're loving what you're listening to, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast. Not only does this give helpful information to others who may not know where to find it, but it also helps me out too so that I can keep providing you with more episodes. So on that note, check back soon to catch the next episode of the Fit as a Mama Bear podcast.